I mean, this is a key thing that we're going to have to save our human family from this 0.1% of the human family that has decided that they're going to use thermonuclear threat to destroy the entire world to maintain their continued privileged access to these strategic raw materials. That we know this is what's going on the planet, and that we've got to take steps to undo this, and we've got to use every single tool that we have in the democratic system while we still have it to organize our people, educate our people, mobilize our people, get a bill like this passed, get the right people put on that panel, and start to disclose this information right away so we can prepare our people and we can take the measures necessary to disassemble those nuclear warheads. We've got to do this right away. Otherwise, we're going to have an intervention. We're going to have an intervention, and the people are not ready for this intervention yet because they've been denied the truth of it even existing. So we've got to do both things. We've got to educate the people, let them know that this is true, take every measure that we can to disassemble the nuclear warheads, and prepare our people for a potential intervention, which is in the offing right now. They've got huge amounts of stuff going on in Sedona right now. They've got they saw 20 of these major triangles rise coming out of Sedona just last week, all with the United States military transports all around them. So there's something really going on. Something's going on, and people better get ready for it. But the bottom line is the church knows that it has to start mobilizing right away to start preparing people for what's getting ready to come. And that's happening now. There's huge activities going on now. Lots more. They deployed an entire carrier group down off.
A carrier group?
Yeah. The Nimitz carrier group. They deployed it down off the Baja to monitor the site down there. There's an underwater base for sure, right off Guadalupe Island, down underneath the sea.
Can we Google Guadalupe Island so we can see that?
Yeah, there's a specific spot.
You said this has to do with the church?
No, what I'm saying is that there are things happening now. There's such rapid developments that are going on now that they now know that there is this location right off Guadalupe Island between there and Baja.
That island right there on the screen.
Which one is Guadalupe?
Unless we just lost the screen.
Is Guadalupe Island. Yeah, down there's Baja. One of those. It's right there. It's which one is Guadalupe?
The little thing right there. Yeah, that thing.
Yeah, that would be it.
Got it.
Okay, so is that Guadalupe Island? Yeah, that's the one. Right off that island, right there, beneath the sea. They deployed the entire the Nimitz carrier.
That's David Fravers.
Yep.
Right.
And they monitored over 100 sightings of UFOs coming and going down into the ocean right there and going down to the bottom of the ocean. And they were monitored by the submarines. That's right, monitored by the submarines underneath the water coming and going, so that there's virtually certainly a base there. And that there's another base outside of Sedona, Arizona, over by there's a place called the Secret Mountain Wilderness over there. That's just totally desolate area. There's a base there where where the craft are, and so there's a number of them high in the mountains and remote areas of the planet, and that they're here now, and that they're extraordinarily distressed. You can tell about the state of affairs right now
of humanity.
Yes.
Do you think that some of them possibly could be something else? And to be specific on that, I'm not saying all of them, but that some of them could be some form of advanced 40 to 60 years ahead DARPA weaponry or something like that we aren't aware of, meaning like this one outside Guadalupe, if they're going into the water right there, so close to this island where we have carrier ships and stuff like that, on something like that, more than like, say, a Sedona, Arizona example, I more think something like this at Guadalupe could involve weaponry as opposed to actual alien UFOs, if you will. You think that's possible?
No, if you phrase it that way, is it conceivable? There's a lot of things that are conceivable. But that's not how you really conduct an investigation. what you do is you work from probability projections, and you work out from that. That it's quite clear to me that facility off Guadalupe is in fact a base, an extraterrestrial base. Because the way that the carrier group has been acting, that they dig in and monitor that thing and monitor it under the water and keep track of it and keep records of what's going on, that would not be being done with one of our own weapon systems. But the one in Sedona, on the other hand, there's U.S. military personnel all around that place, and there's helicopters. They're Apache helicopters and others that are disposed, and they accompany the coming and going of these big triangles that fly in and out of there. And that they're witnesses that we've interviewed that say that there are tall whites or tall grays there, along with what they call the mantis people. The mantis people are huge, 7 feet tall, extraordinarily skinny, thin, kind of bowed over people. They remind people of praying mantises. That this particular species,
like Sean Bradley,
no, not that bad. No, some people refer to these people as insectoids.
Insectoids.
Yeah, it's kind of a pejorative of them, but they remind people of praying mantises, and that whenever they're seen with tall grays or the short grays or the reptilians at all, they seem to be in charge. They're constantly giving telepathic commands of how do they deploy, et cetera. And
when have they been seen?
That they've been seen there in that Sedona base.
Yeah, but
for example. Let's see here. We're in 2024 now. It was probably 2018 or so,
and
2017. That Melinda Leslie is one of the witnesses who has seen them.
Who's she?
She's a person who's an abductee that was taken into custody by them in a MyLabs operation.
A MyLabs operation.
It was a military operation, masking as an abduction. Steven Greer has talked about that. It's one of the things that Steven and I agree upon, that there are such things, that there have been efforts undertaken by United States military personnel to mimic abduction, UFO abductions.
Okay, so this was a mimicked abduction.
That's right.
That she was abducted
That's right.
for.
That's right. And she was taken to that base.
What base?
The base outside of Sedona. The one by the secret mountain wilderness
That's
area.
not S4.
No. That's in Nevada.
Okay.
That's S4 in the Area 51. S4 is about 11 miles away from Area 51, but they're both in Nevada.
So she's taken to this base by Sedona.
And what they're doing is they were doing experiments trying to discern people's psychic abilities. That there's a major program that's going on in the United States military, because their pilots were unable to fly these things because they're flown by telepathy. The craft are flown by telepathy.
Yeah.
And the pilots, the kind of people that are trained to be pilots, are not telepathically trained. They're extraordinarily linear, very, very intense, scientific, logical, positivist type folks, in that they aren't able to communicate with the craft. And so that there's been a whole program to try to recruit people, to try to find out people who are psychic, to see whether they can actually be involved in helping to run these craft, because the craft are run psychically by the ETs. And so unless they have ET people working with them, which it appears they do at the Sedona base, that the ET people are the ones that actually pilot the craft, the large craft. But that they're given U.S. military escorts with F-18s and the major helicopter gunships actually protect them when they're flying some of these.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, so she allegedly saw them in 2017, 2018 when she was taken to this base, and they were down there and they were being interrogated.
They were being experimented with. They were asked to do these experiments of psychic experiments.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what they were doing. And there's lots of information about that now, about this weird program that they've got going of trying to recruit people that they think are psychic because their normally trained pilots are not able to fly these things.
It's almost.
But what happened is that there was an original program that was the Advanced Weapons Special Access Program, that the funding, the original $22 million that Harry Reid, got authorized, Senator Reid got authorized, that was a program that was designed to do two things, actually. One was to try to figure out how to back engineer the craft that had been recovered, but it was a more public, even though top secret. It was a more well-known program inside the Pentagon than the actual deep program, where they were involved in knocking down UFOs and actively, aggressively going after them.
Knocking down.
Oh yes.
Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah. This is not just a passive program where they just wait and see if there happens to be a crash of a UFO. We're not talking about. They've admitted, quote, crash retrieval organizations,
yes.
But they were actually knocking them down. They've developed technology to knock some of these things down, and they've engaged
like
in
EMPs and stuff.
Yes, it's an extraordinarily powerful technology, we'll call it, that is capable of disabling the craft and forcing them down.
Isn't that a little like this is where I get confused, and it gets beyond what my brain can really create, because it gets to questions that are beyond the known laws of physics that we have. But like you talked earlier about the Drake equation and the conservative estimate of there being 2 to 6 potential civilizations, and you use numbers like potentially 8 billion years ahead or something like that.
Yeah.
So when I hear things like that, I do wonder how a civilization, let's say they're even 1 billion years ahead, not 8, how they could possibly be stopped by some caveman or less than that technology like EMPs, I'm assuming based on our timeline that we have.
It's an extraordinarily sophisticated technology that's been developed to take them down. Now that doesn't mean that they haven't compensated for that. But there were a number of the vehicles that were recovered, intact vehicles that were forced down by this technology. And so what I'm saying is that this wasn't a passive, just go find one that happens to have accidentally crashed, gotten hit by lightning or something.
It's an act of intergalactic war.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. That's one of the major concerns about this, that this would be considered a potential act of war against them, because our military people were considering it an act of war for them to come and shut off our nuclear missiles.
Yes.
And so that they viewed that as a kinetic act, as they referred to it, against our forces. And so they engaged in kinetic actions against the craft, and that they've brought some of them down.
And so you're saying that this program that was in charge of that was far deeper and more classified than, say, OSAP.
That OSAP was what Senator Reid, in a way, did, and they authorized the funding for a $22 million program to kind of investigate it at kind of another level, strictly for trying to figure out if there was any kind of access they could get to the technology for weapons development. It was an advanced weapons program. But the fact of the matter was there was a much deeper weapons program, a classified weapons program that involved the kinetic activity going after these the craft in the attempt to back engineer them.
Do we know how far back that went, and or who was in charge of it? We
know I don't know the exact date yet as to when this new technology got developed, the ability to force them down and to recover the intact craft. We know that it exists, and we know that it was formulated. We know that there was another highly sophisticated program that was developed by the Central Intelligence Agency that was called the Golden Domes program. That was a technology that was actually able to discern the craft when they were still masked. They were still cloaked, and that the CIA developed a technology that was able to locate them.
Wow!
Yeah, and then there was an entire center that the Central Intelligence Agency had controlling that.
When was this?
This has been going on for over 10 years. Now
Pre-OSAP or now?
This was pre-OSAP.
Okay, so that would mean maybe like late 90s,
Yeah.
something like that starts.
Yeah, and so that the bottom line is that this activity, this aggressive activity toward the craft, is a great source of concern, and is part of what they're so concerned about quote catastrophic disclosure.
Yeah.
Being able to reveal that the national security state apparatus has taken it upon itself to engage in activities that could be perceived as an act of war against this civilization. In making up their own mind that, them having shut off our nuclear missiles was an act of war, and so therefore they thought that they were entitled to retaliate against them. That whole kind of activity going on outside of the control of Congress, is contrary to the Constitution of the United States. The United States government and the Congress is supposed to be in charge of making decisions as to whether we're going to engage in acts of war toward a foreign power. Now they've got all kinds of efforts that have been made by the Covert Operations Division of the CIA, the 5412 Committee of the National Security Council, to take it upon themselves to take initiatives under the Covert Operations and the Intelligence Act that they've done. But the bottom line is that in my judgment, this is not constitutional. That they are committing perjury, they're lying to the United States Congress, they're conducting military operations against the craft that would be considered an act of war, and so therefore that there is some strong reason to believe that they've engaged in some sort of communication, which is designed to establish some sort of set of protocols pursuant to which they engage with each other. The craft are clearly engaging in activities that are viewed as surveillance. That they're surveilling our nuclear aircraft carriers, our nuclear submarines. They're monitoring places where our nuclear weapons are stored. They're monitoring our private nuclear facilities, energy facilities, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So they're engaged in a very effective surveillance system about our nuclear capacities. Now, national security state people immediately experience that as dangerous to have some sort of foreign power, surveilling our top secret facilities, et cetera. Whereas other people on the planet view our activities in developing those major weapons and threatening to use them, in deploying them, and targeting other people with them as being acts of aggression, which they are, and that we know from the from the 1992 United States Defense Department Policy Planning Guidance documents, for example, we know that in fact that the United States national security state apparatus is engaged in an affirmative, aggressive program of attempting to establish full spectrum military dominance over the planet, and they've acknowledged it.
When?
This was in April of 1992. That after Gorbachev dissolved the Soviet Union. And secured the agreement.
HW in office?
Yes, with HW and James Baker, both agreeing with Gorbachev to refrain from attempting to recruit any of the the former republics of the Soviet Union that would be released from the Soviet Socialist Republic, to try to refrain from engaging them in recruiting them into NATO or any of the Eastern Bloc countries. That was the agreement. And as soon as Bush Jr. came in, Cheney came in.
Thank you.
They just defied that and started going after them and starting to recruit them into NATO. That's what's generated the present situation that we're in now. Okay, so the bottom line is that immediately after Gorbachev signed the release of all of the socialist republics and dissolved the Soviet Union voluntarily pursuant to that agreement, what happened is that Dick Cheney, who was the Secretary of Defense at that time under the Bush Senior administration, and Paul Wolfowitz, and Scooter Libby, and Doug Fife,
all the neocons.
And the guys that were in the Defense Department under Dick Cheney gathered together and they prepared the 1992 United States Defense Department Policy Planning Guidance document. And in it, they actually proposed that they push back against the inclination to reduce the military budget now that the Soviet Union had voluntarily stepped back from the Cold War. And they said, we can't allow this to happen. We have to increase the military budget so that we can establish full spectrum military dominance over the planet. And that the purpose of that is to secure and maintain our continued privileged access to the strategic raw materials that are needed by the members of this new Northern Industrial Alliance that we're going to be forming. There's lots of details about that. A lot of people don't know about it, but they exist now. And that whole program that has been undertaken by Dick Cheney and his cohorts has been operational now for some time. And the problem is that once they mounted that under the W. Bush administration, in defiance of the previous agreements that have been made, what's happened is it's been quite clear that we have been engaged in an activity that is ever increasing the possibilities of nuclear confrontation with both China and with Russia. And so that you see a major increase in the activities of the UFO vehicles, intensely monitoring our nuclear capacities, the deployment of our nuclear forces, trying to determine, how aggressively we're going to be utilizing our nuclear weapons capacities.
Since 92?
Since 92. That's exactly right. Because if I possess 100 units of information about a particular subject, and I reveal 85% of them to you, it's not obfuscating. It's just a limited disclosure.
Yes.
When you obfuscate something is when you release the 85% of the information and then you lie about the other 15%.
But isn't that semantics? That's effectively what they'd be doing if they didn't tell us about. If they said, "Wow, look over here at this shiny thing," don't look at that over there. Well, that's kind of lying, no?
Well, one just needs to be careful in this particular area. Okay. It's kind of it's not kind of like lying, sort of. That's dangerous territory. What's going on here is an extraordinarily sophisticated process, pursuant to which there are people inside the national security state is a bad idea to begin with. Mm-hmm. When you have a national security state, they're locked into a second paradigm worldview, a dialectical worldview that there's good guys and bad guys, and and we're authorized to do really horrible things. I told you about Henry Kissinger, in his introductory lecture every year in Gov 182, about if you don't believe that our country has the right to lie, cheat, steal, and even kill, on behalf of the narrow self-interest of our own nation state versus others, then you shouldn't remain in my course, that kind of thing. Yeah. That mindset in and of itself is intrinsically evil. It sets up an intrinsic dialectic between portions of the human family that is inevitably going to generate conflict. Okay, and the problem is that you have people that are raised inside that culture in the military and in the intelligence community, et cetera. And they're trained not only to conceal certain information, they're actually trained to actively attempt to deceive others.
Yes.
Okay, and the problem is that they developed those skill sets vis-a-vis some alternative nation states whom they viewed to be adversaries in their quest to establish full spectrum dominance over the planet.
Yeah.
You know, and the problem is that they turn those skills against the American people, and they turn those skills against Congress.
That's right.
And that's unconstitutional for them to engage in that type of activity. In that the creation of the nation state, the national security state in and of itself creates that intrinsic danger. And it's come to manifest itself over the period of the last, 79 years or so since they created it. Okay, in 77 years now since December of 1947. Okay, so that's what we're encountering right now is the inevitable repercussions of a national security state. So you have an entire community of people who believe that they're not only entitled to, but they're obliged to somehow actively deceive the American public, and to deceive Congress. This is violative of the fundamental premises of our Constitution, and that we have to undo this. We have to undo this in the context of this particular subject. And so that we want to be careful during the process that we're doing this of being clear about what we're accusing people of doing. That the people here that we're talking about with Lou and the rest of the people that are involved in this endeavor to establish a UAP controlled disclosure campaign plan. Mm-hmm. It is clear that they're at one and the same time attempting to reveal some things and intending to have other things not revealed. Okay.
And what do you think what do you think the highlights of those things not revealed are? That they don't want to reveal? Like what kinds of things on a high level?
Some of the things are more obvious and are less troublesome because they're so obvious. For example, they'll say, first of all, we have to make sure that whatever the disclosure process is, that it does not alter the present elements of power on the planet. Well, now you can either agree or disagree with that. Right. I tend to disagree with that. I don't think the elements of power on the planet right now are doing that well.
I agree.
Bringing us to the brink of thermonuclear war. But they would argue that, that's brinkmanship. You get to the edge of nuclear war, and then you end up, getting, you just get to dissolve the Soviet Union. You get to get access to the at least to the major breadbasket areas of the Ukraine, even if you lose the Crimea, the warm water port to Russia. And they engage in this kind of conduct all the time, and they're threatening the potential thermonuclear destruction of the entire planet as the axis on which they apply that particular set of skills. I think that's a really bad idea.
I agree.
I think that our human family ought to step back from that. And then they say, well, it's fine for you to say that because you're not charged with responsibility, these heavy responsibilities we have, that they say. And it's what I've discovered in my 50 years of practice is what I've discovered is that there's an awful lot of people inside that national security state who have become so disenchanted with what it is that they've been asked to do in order to effectuate this kind of dialectical confrontation that they are ostensibly engaged in, which was at one time, at least in their own minds, attempting to stop, authoritarian governments from the Soviet Union from taking over the world. But when they in fact found themselves supporting authoritarian governments and torturing people and killing people and assassinating people, et cetera, after a period of time, they began to suspect there's something wrong here.
Yeah.
that they're actually doing the very things that they were taught as young people were the very things you're trying to stop from doing in the world. And so that we've been able to establish communication with some of these people, and they're willing to come forward and say, here, let me share some of the information that you need in order to try to reform the national security state apparatus. Okay?
Yes.
That that my opinion is the national security state apparatus has to be more than reformed. It has to be overcome. It has to be dissolved. You know, it has to be dissolved in the Soviet Union. It has to be dissolved in China. It has to be dissolved.
How realistic is that, though, Danny?
Well, how realistic is destruction of the whole planet? It's not a really good idea.
I think that's more. Unfortunately, I think that's more realistic than getting all these prisoner dilemma stuck countries, espionage units back, reined in.
Well, I think that that's the challenge that we have, and I think that one of the dynamics that has to play into this is increasing the level of consciousness of the people, okay, and exercising some of the powers that we still have in a democracy, okay. That the avenues are there for us to do this. You know, it's an extraordinarily difficult challenge. I'll agree to that. But we have to know what our ultimate mission is. Our ultimate mission is to dissolve away the structural sources of injustice, inside both Western and Eastern civilizations right now, because the elite that have risen into power in both hemispheres are threatening thermonuclear destruction of the planet.
Yeah.
Okay, they're engaging in the maintenance of control over the petroleum industry and polluting the planet and polluting the oceans and threatening the life-generating capacity of our planet. Okay, they are on the very brink of actually instigating a potential intervention on the part of an extraterrestrial civilization in order to preserve the life-generating capacity of our planet. That's what's happening right now, and that's what's panicking them. So all of a sudden they've come forward saying, "Wait a second, that we think that we're on the brink of some potential intervention here, and if they intervene in an aggressive enough way to shut off our nuclear weapons capacities in both East and West, that's going to reveal their presence, and we aren't ready yet." We haven't really taken the steps that are necessary to prepare our people for the intervention of an extraterrestrial civilization like this. And so you see this thing happening right now, kind of this mysterious process going on of some element inside the national security state coming forward, with the either pretense or at least posture of being good guys all of a sudden.
That's right.
Of that they've seen the light. And that they think, I'm really feeling bad about, how secretive we've been.
Let's tell everyone.
The excesses, but let's make it clear. We're not here talking about revealing everything. We're talking about revealing some things. And there's some other things that we just really can't reveal, but we can't tell you what those are. Under any circumstance, we can't tell you what they are. But one of the things that they'll lead right with is, of course, whatever the changes are that are going to be flowing from disclosure, we can't have them alter the elements of power on the planet right now. That's number one. Okay, that would be, in their view, catastrophic.
Yes.
Primarily because they view themselves as being assigned responsibility for keeping those people in power.
Right.
That's how they view their military covert mission. Okay.
They want to sustain what they have.
That's right. And so there are other things that one's an obvious one, right?
Of course.
Then they have others like that. Well, there may be some things that have been done on behalf of maintaining the secrets down through the decades. They may have engaged in untoward activity toward private citizens.
They would never do that, Danny.
And that would be catastrophic to reveal some of that, because if you revealed that, then the confidence of the people in that elite would be diminished.
But doesn't it matter like when it was too? Like eventually things like MK Ultra got revealed in some ways, but it was after the fact. So it's like,
but for example, you don't know that at MK Ultra, the two major guys that were protecting the kind of death of people that occurred were Warren Burger, who became the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, and Jacob Javits, who became the United States Senator of the state of New York.
Yeah.
You don't know any of that stuff, right? And they say, well, you can't reveal that stuff. Because that would really undermine people's blind confidence in the elite. So you can't do that. So see, they have. That's why the people that are the guardians of the national security state are not the right people to be making these decisions, because they are so wedded to the blind allegiance to the kind of elite that are in charge
Yeah.
of the planet right now, in that they're used to the brinkmanship of threatening thermonuclear destruction of the entire planet on behalf of maintaining their continued privileged access to the strategic raw materials, that they view that to be a legitimate mission. So that they really can't be the ones that are making these decisions. All of that will come down to who the people are that are going to be on this 9-person commission. Right, this panel, the board of review,
this sets out.
That this sets out. Now, they clearly are intending to have those 9 people be people made up of the exact same elements that have kept it secret for all
like a
this
Warren
time.
Commission.
Yeah, that's right. And so, and you can't let that happen. And so that what we have to do as citizens, we have to be able to develop a strong enough citizen base of educated people who know how to put pressure on their congressional representatives and senators, et cetera, to be able to make sure that the people that end up getting appointed to that particular commission, are people who are not dedicated to the same kind of preservations that they're talking about. They're not dedicated to maintaining all the elements of power in the exact same position they are now. They're not dedicated to keeping secret whatever some of the excesses are that some people have gone to protect the secrets, et cetera. And if you can get them to start listing the kind of things they think are catastrophic, then what you have to do is you have to say, well, the people that are going to be on this board, cannot be devoted to protecting that kind of information, because that's not really catastrophic. All that really is goring your own ox,
Sure.
in the national security state. And so that your myopia in determining what is catastrophic from what is potentially catastrophic in reality is not to be trusted. Okay, so that the dynamic that takes place once this gets to be passed by the House, this is easy to get passed by the Senate because they passed it unanimously out of the Senate Intelligence Committee. They passed the 64-page bill, with
What's wrong with the House?
The House is the fact that they've got guys like Turner, who is the head of the House Intelligence Committee, who's from the 10th Congressional District of Ohio, where the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is. You got the guy like Rogers, Mike Rogers, over in the 2nd Congressional District in Alabama, where the Redstone Rocket Range is, where they're doing the back engineering training. They've both persuaded Mike Johnson, who's kind of hanging on by the skin of his teeth, of being the Speaker of the House, who can be threatened by any given one person to remove him, that they talked him into refusing to allow the bill to come to a vote.
Oh my
If
God.
this 64-page bill that was passed virtually unanimously by the United States Senate were put to a floor vote in the House, we'd have 400 votes to pass this.
But they won't put it to a vote
because a tiny handful of people that are wedded to the aerospace industry, right? But this is eventually going to get passed. I mean, it's clear that the political forces that have come together to make this the proposal that the United States Senate is being proposed by the majority leader of the Senate, with Chuck Schumer, and guys like Marco Rubio, and Mike Rounds, from South Dakota, that this is going to become the law. And it's going to take a few passes to get this done. And it's clear that the struggle is going to be over who the panel is going to be, and who the president is going to appoint to that panel. And so that we know that we have access to the democratic instrumentalities of our government if we will do our job. You and I know, how lazy average American people are.
Yeah.
People would spend more time watching football games than they would bothering to read this statute.
Oh, yeah.
Okay?
It is also boring.
And no, it's actually quite exciting. Actually,
You think that the way they write this is exciting?
No. But what I'm saying is that when you realize that they're actually talking about releasing the top secret information about the UFOs, and they start saying they're talking about flying saucers and they're talking about extraterrestrial life forms, when you see this in a bill like this, you say, now this is pretty interesting stuff, okay? But the fact of the matter is that we're not even requiring them to spend their time reading the bill. We're telling them what's in the bill. Here, we'll give it to you in like a 1.5-page synopsis.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we have to do is get people being willing to exercise their constitutional responsibility as citizens if they really want to do this. Okay. And we have to be able to demonstrate to the people that want to have the controlled disclosure that the American people want more than they're willing to tell. Okay? That's what we need to do.
We're also dancing around a 500-pound elephant in the room here, which is the fact that we're not just talking about the government itself when it comes to this topic. And this is where we can bring in the UFO crash retrievals, because that's the best example right here. With this bill, you're talking about the government being able to reveal what they know and what they have access to. Mm-hmm. But in speaking with Lou and hearing some other guys who are familiar with this stuff talk, allegedly there's a huge problem where, if you want to just paint the term military-industrial complex on it, I think that's pretty apropos. Mm-hmm. There's a huge problem where the United States government over the past 6-7 decades has given private organizations, mm-hmm. meaning like the Lockheeds of the world, the Northrops, whoever, fill in the blank here, access to not only head up some of these programs, but to literally have carte blanche to do what they want, such that the evidence that they may recover from something like a UFO crash retrieval isn't even owned by the government. Even if the government declares eminent domain, we don't even know where some of this stuff is because the organizations themselves have it. How do we rein in something that's now 7 decades in the making, potentially?
Yeah. What you do is that actually in this 64-page bill, they are included. This does have an eminent domain. This does have subpoena power. This does have the right to issue subpoenas, to take depositions, to go after them, to dig this information out from them.
But you got to know what you're looking for, no?
Yeah. I've done this for 50 years. Once you start going down this road, you have a pretty good idea of what you're looking for. And our job is to identify what it is we're looking for, and at least in broad categories, and to make sure that they don't dodge us. We've succeeded in doing this over and over and over again. Okay, so this particular bill is drafted to deal with those aerospace corporations. Okay, the House bill doesn't. They specifically took out demanding that the aerospace corporations pony up what all their information is. Okay, they did that intentionally. So, and it's an obvious thing that they've done.
Of course.
Okay, so what we have to do is turn our focus on the House of Representatives to make sure that we can get those 3 guys out of position. You get rid of Turner as the head of the Intelligence Committee, get rid of Rogers as the head of the Armed Services Committee, and you get rid of Johnson as the Speaker of the House.
Meaning, vote them out of office altogether?
No. If in fact the Democratic Party takes over the House of Representatives, all those 3 guys lose their job. They're out, and so that the people who ascend into positions of authority now are not yet in the pocket of the aerospace industry, okay? And
How do we know that?
Because we know who they are, okay? And so that if in fact the Democrats take control of the House of Representatives, they will pass this 64-page bill, okay? They will pass the bill, all right? And as long as whether the Democrats hold control of the Senate or not doesn't make any difference, because the Republicans inside the Senate support the bill too. And so that the Senate, no matter what happens with it, is going to repass this bill. And if the House goes over into the coal of Democrats, the Democrats are going to vote for this. So then we're into the struggle over who's going to be put on that panel. Okay, and so that what I'm saying is the reason that you have lawyers, the reason that our people have lawyers, the population like myself, is that we can help steer the way through this process so that we can get at them. Now, you have the right to make a rejoinder saying, yeah, but doesn't it always turn out getting a little too late? Isn't it clear that the Congress is really under the control of the military-industrial complex and the major capitalists, et cetera? The answer is yes, unless until we do our job. They realize that the American people have been cowed into not exercising our authority, okay? And we're letting them get away with this. And what we've got to do in the New Paradigm Institute, for example, we've got to be able to explain to people the kind of dangers that this is generating. That this is a dangerous situation that we've got here now. That we've got the doomsday clock of the American atomic scientists, the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists, has now reset the doomsday clock for the first time. Now it's 90 seconds before midnight. This is the shortest fuse on the doomsday clock that has ever existed since it was created in 1947, because the United States military now has moved nuclear missiles, the B-61 nuclear missiles, the mid-range nuclear missiles, into Germany and into Poland, and now they're moving them into the Eastern Bloc right now. Okay, and Putin has responded by giving a command to his field commanders now to train up the deployment and the use of tactical nuclear weapons in the field in order to protect those two provinces that they've taken back in Crimea.
Yeah.
Okay. So we know that that's happening now. And just last week, the Biden administration has now issued a what they call nuclear deployment employment executive order, preparing to put short fuses on 1,600 United States missiles in the submarines and in the forward projection for immediate first strike, and to coordinate a first strike against the Soviet Union, China, and North Korea all at one time. Okay? And they've issued that order now to start preparing that. And that's why the doomsday machine now the doomsday clock has been put to 90 seconds short of midnight.
Jesus.
Okay? So the people need to understand that. And they need to understand that this is correlated with a major upsurge in the UFO surveillance of all of our nuclear facilities. Okay? And that they've demonstrated their capacity to shut them off. They've demonstrated their capacity, and they've demonstrated their capacity to be able to shut down our nuclear aircraft carrier
and in other countries as well.
That's right. And so that type of intervention, if it becomes necessary for them to intervene in order to preserve the life-generating capacity of our planet, so as not to be destroyed by thermonuclear exchange, that's going to reveal their presence. Okay, and that the national security state is not prepared yet for revealing their presence. So what they've done is they've come forward with this process right here. They've come forward with this process to figure out how they can choreograph releasing an adequate amount of information to start preparing our people so they can continue to utilize nuclear weapons as a threat to establish and maintain their control. That's what they're doing right now. So we're not being bamboozled by what they're up to here.
But this is also, so the people who are involved with this and getting this forward are the people who were part of, part of ATIP and a part of OSAP.
That's right.
Before that. And those programs, regardless of however they morphed into each other, they talk all in skiffs. It's highly secretive. Guys like Hal Puthoff, Jacques Vallée are involved, some of the brightest minds in the world. Yep. But still, you say that specifically like some UFO crash retrieval groups in the Pentagon were far more secretive than that?
Oh, yes.
So how sinister is that stuff then?
Very. Very, and those are the people that we have to figure out whether we can get the people here that are doing this to be on our side, to be able to dig those people out and put them out of business. That's the key to this thing.
Do you think that's possible? Cynically, my head goes.
Yeah, no, I do.
Think so.
I do. I think it's possible. It's a dangerous game because those people view themselves as authorized to use lethal force. And they view themselves as authorized to use lethal force against these people.
Right, yeah.
Okay? And so it's a dangerous game, but it's Father David says, nobody gets out of life alive here, And so what we've got to do is we've got to be willing to put ourselves at risk in order to save the planet, okay? And to save the planet from a potential intervention which we're not yet ready for.
Yeah.
On the part of the extraterrestrial people. And so what we've got to do is start getting our people prepared for this so that it can be a positive relationship that we have with the extraterrestrial civilization. I mean, we've got to come to grips with this reality.
Yeah.
And that what we have to do is we have to take steps to try to preserve as much agency as we can for our own sovereignty. As a species on our planet, that we ought to have as much authority to make our own decisions as possible. That if we're so stupid as that we've come right to the brink of an actual thermonuclear war that mandates the kind of intervention of an extraterrestrial civilization to come in and say, that's it, you've abused your authority, you're out of business now.
Right.
Okay? So the question is, how much out of business are we going to get put here? You know, are they going to come in and take over entirely and say, look, you guys have threatened the destruction of the life-generating capacity of your entire planet. We can't allow that to happen. Okay, so you've lost your authority. You know, what we have to do as a citizenry is we have to demonstrate that we merit preserving some degree of agency over our own decision-making process. And the way that we have to do that is by taking care of these people and getting rid of them. Okay, that's what we have to do. We have to demonstrate that we're capable of mobilizing and getting rid of this elite that is threatening our planet for their own personal self-advantage. We've got to be able to demonstrate that, or else we've forsaken our rights. You know,
you've talked with all these people too, and you've been doing this for so many years. What do you think this is? Do you think these are from another planet?
Yeah,
do you think it's future humans?
No, I think this is real simple. You know, this is like, you know, Occam's razor. You know, we know that there's now we know that there's not just 100 billion stars in our system. They put up the Hubble and they realized that there were 200 billion stars in our thing. Then they put up the Planck thing. They realized that there were 300 billion stars. Now with the James Webb thing, they know there's like a 500 billion star systems in our galaxy, okay, and that they've all got planets. They're sure that they've all got planets now. They're virtually certain they've all got planets, and the 20% of them have got planets in the so-called Goldilocks area. You know, and that some portion of them have generated life, obviously. So there's other intelligent civilizations, and you give them 5-6 billion years more to work on superluminal flight, and so they can fly here.
Yeah.
You know, so they can come and go. You know, you don't have to get really super complicated about the whole thing. You know, this is sort of like a bus transport operation going on here. You know, and they're coming and going, and they've set up bases here on our planet. And our planet is one of the comparatively few planets that actually gestates life. You know, and it's a valuable resource. Life is a valuable resource. That they take life from our planet and they plant it in other star systems and stuff. You know, that this is going on. I mean, it sounds remarkable, but
of course it does. Sounds crazy,
but the bottom line is it's a pretty simple, you know, Occam's razor explanation for what it is that's going on. Now, there's a lot of other things that are conflated with it.
How so?
You know, for example, you know, Marian apparitions and people believing that they see angels and people they see Bigfoot. You know, there's all kinds of other things going on that are strange, that are anomalous situations that are going on. You know, and some people think there are such things as ghosts. You know, that people's
paranormal stuff.
Paranormal stuff, and what they do is they conflate this with what is basically a comparatively prosaic event that's really going on here, you know, and so that we're focusing on this one. You know, this is an extraordinary event that's taking place. It's a transhistoric event. It's our journey into the stars. It's our becoming part of a galactic civilization. You know, and there are lots of other these things going on around. And I don't disparage those things, but I don't say, you know, please spare me all the talk about, you know, the Skinwalker Ranch, you know, and Bigfoot and all these things.
It's a distraction.
It's what I'm saying is that you just stay focused on these things that you know. I've interviewed dozens and dozens and dozens of people about this other phenomenon, and it's pretty straightforward what's going on. You know, and that 40% of the people that you interview talk about being telepathically warned about nuclear weapons. That this is going to destroy the life-generating capacity of your planet. And, you know, you're going to destroy your entire species.
And it goes beyond governments to what you said earlier, and we kind of got off it, but it's perfect to tie the bow all together here. You know, you're talking about religions too. You're talking about any cultural organizations that could exist around the world that have some sort of belief system. They all have to get on board with whatever disclosure will happen here. And you said something about you've been to the Vatican. Did you say you went into the Vatican archives?
No. I've
You
talked to Johan. I've talked to Johan Ix, who runs the archives
Right.
now, because I've been over there a number of times, and so he came to see me the last time I was over there and wanted me to write an article, a letter to the editor of the New York Times, recommending that they open the Vatican archives on Pope Pius XII, who's the one that signed the Concordat with the Nazis. And all that, because they want to be able to get a look at that and allow researchers to look at that. So
you read Gerald Posner's book, Vatican Bankers?
Yeah.
Wild shit.
Yeah. It's all the stuff about Roberto Calvi and Sedona, and I know all those guys. I was the one who was supposed to interview Cardinal Sedona, or Cardinal Marcinkus. They were thinking of allowing him to leave the Vatican. They didn't ultimately, but I was supposed to debrief him as the Jesuit headquarters. So I know all about those guys, and Propaganda Due and Lucio Jalli and that whole crowd of Propaganda Due, the 33rd degree Masonic Lodge. I spend all our time focusing on these things.
That's for another podcast. We'll be here all night if we do that. But what just in general, do you think within the Vatican archives, which is basically like some of the most historical religious stuff that it could exist in the world, and is also run by something that is effectively like the world's first intelligence organization, being the Vatican.
Yeah.
Like, do you think they're holding back a lot of information that could be contradictory to some of their beliefs that involve extraterrestrials in those archives?
It's not exactly contradictory to their beliefs, other than the false assertions that they developed during the Middle Ages, where they tried to pretend that Jesus was some absolutely unique event. That this was more than he was a mutation of what's happening in our human family, that we're evolving teleologically, these other skills, and in other adepts and other religions have displayed the same kind of siddha, of the being able to materially manifest things, to levitate, heal people with their hands, etc. These are qualities that our human family has, and they're going to have to come clean about that. But I'm sure that they have information about the UFO histories that they have, because I asked for it, and when Johan called me in and asked me to write this letter to the editor of the New York Times about Pius XII, he said, if there's anything I could ever do for you, I said, you know what I want to do for us, because I've already written to you before. And he said, yes. What else? He says that one isn't going to work right now, So he hasn't agreed to let me see the stuff yet.
Could be interesting to see how they come around with it, but
the church is going to land on its feet. Francis is the first Jesuit in history that's been the Pope now, and he's been working very, very hard to try to bring them up into the 21st century. This is a very, very major issue, though.
Yeah.
But the statement that they made, is an opening for the conversation that we have to have.
Well, you said earlier that the word religion comes from religare.
Relinking.
And then the word for intellect comes from intellectus?
Intellectus, the ability to distinguish the difference between.
Right. So distinguishing the difference between, to separate out ideas, and then relinking intellect, religion, science, religion. Science is something we associate with imagery of test tubes and math and shit like that. Religion is something we associate with kneel, stand, pray to God, whatever. Yeah. But at their core, they're both trying to figure out whatever laws or known ideas exist within our world. That's or right. By extension, our universe, to get to the very core meaning of life.
That's right.
So it's very strange that throughout our human history and our little speck here in the galaxy, those two things have found a way to constantly be at war, when in reality they are intertwined completely by word and everything.
It's part of the projection of the dialectic. It's the second paradigm worldview. It's rooted in the second chakra. It's a whole chakra energy thing of kind of setting up bipolar aspects of reality. Good guys versus bad guys, red team. I mean, look at the training that we get here in our country. This intense. I mean, we put individual human beings in cages and have them fight until one of them, gets knocked unconscious. We have red team and blue team in football, where they smash into each other as hard as they can, fighting over a ball going up and down the field, or bouncing a ball down and stick it in the basket, baseball whack. We have there's an incredible training that goes on in the second paradigm of this dialectical binary bifurcation of reality, and what it is a projection onto our culture of an experience that we experience deep in the center of our intellect. And our intellect is what is given us the sense that we're separate and apart from everything else. That we're riding around up here behind our eyeballs, kind of looking out on the rest of the world, and we're trying to figure out how to get control over it and how to manipulate it and how we can have a binary relationship with it. And it's a very intense trap that we're caught in here. And we've got to unplug this particular second chakra, and we got to kind of open up our sacral chakra and open up our heart chakra. We've got to, that this is all known. There are scientific techniques to do this. The Buddhists know about it. The Hindus know about it. We've got to get that information shared over back into the Catholic laity. The people know about it in the monasteries. There's all kinds of these monastic monks that kind of levitate and do all these weird things in the monasteries, and these are the ones that kind of make observations about ethics and moral because they're at a higher level of consciousness, and so that this is the kind of the engine behind the kind of theology of the church, etc. So that the Jesuits have a lot of communication that goes on with the Trappists, for example. The Trappists are the monastic group that do a lot of the meditation and stuff. The Jesuits have a whole different form of meditation with the Ignatian spiritual exercises that we do, that are different than the Buddhist type of meditation. And so the Catholic Church became an organ of the state, and that they hid a lot of these secrets about our human family and our capacities that are more exposed in the Eastern traditions, in the Hinduism and Buddhism, etc. Hinduism knows that there's something like 256 different levels of consciousness. There's all kinds of scientific writing about this in the ancient languages. So what they've done is the Catholic Church created a whole set of mythologies that when 99% of all of the people at that time were completely illiterate. They didn't travel more than 50 miles away from the point where they were born.
They had an ivory tower around information.
Didn't know anything, and so that the scholarship and knowledge and reading and stuff were all confined to the people in the church and the priests in the monasteries, etc. Okay, and so that whole hiding of the capabilities of our human family that have to do with real religion, to relinking ourselves back into unity with the consciousness of the universe. These are all things that need to also be disclosed. And that's what's going to happen here with the disclosure in general, that it's not only going to be the government of the United States is going to have to disclose secret information that's been concealing. The Catholic Church is going to have to reveal this information. And it's going to be quite disruptive over lots of people's beliefs, because they've been given such absolute terms that they have to abide by these rules and regulations. And they're going to see that they're relative rules and regulations. But that this is something that the church is going to have to come to grips with. And that they've issued a formal statement back in November 10th of 2007, where they issued a public statement saying that in light of the discovery of more and more of these new exoplanets, because of the launching of the spaceborne telescopes, we had the Hubble, we had the Kepler, now we got the James Webb telescope. Said in light of the discovery of more and more of these new exoplanets, it's now become clear that much sooner than had been previously anticipated, that we're going to be discovering life elsewhere in the universe. Therefore,
than previously anticipated.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what the statement says, issued by Father Jose Gabriel Funes.
Meaning we were already anticipating it.
That's exactly right. And said that, that in light of the discovery of more and more of these new exoplanets, much earlier than we had previously anticipated, we're going to be discovering life elsewhere in the universe. Therefore, the time has arrived for an extraordinarily important conversation about the profound philosophical and theological questions that are posed to our human family by the discovery of life elsewhere in the universe. Now, upon the issuance of that statement by Jose Gabriel Funes, who was the director of the Pontifical Observatory at the time, Jesuit priest, well, I contacted him and flew to see him.
In 07.
And that's right. And I said, look, we need to talk. We need to talk about this now. And he said, look, let's be really clear. He said, we're not talking here about the discovery of some single cell life form under some frozen sea on some distant moon in some far off galaxy. He said, we're talking about another highly intelligent, highly technologically developed, but distinctly non-human species right here in our own Milky Way galaxy. That's what he said. And so I've known since that time that the time has arrived, for this serious conversation among the laity. And I've been trying to figure out how to get Francis, I stay over at Doma when I'm in Rome, where Francis lives. He doesn't live in the Vatican. He won't live there for safety's sake.
Wait, he doesn't?
No, he does not. He lives in the Doma, which is a separate part.
Can we look that up?
It's on the Vatican grounds, but it's not.
Oh, so it's on the grounds.
It's not in the papal apartments.
Okay. I used to live a quarter mile from the Vatican.
Yeah.
Right there. Yeah.
So and so that's where he was in the Doma, and so the bottom line is that. I've been there. I've talked with Johann Ix, who's the head of the archives, to try to talk him into letting us see these documents again. They still have not agreed to do that. But so I sat down and when I told Marcia Smith I would like to have the classified portions of Project Blue Book, she said, "Oh, I'm sure they're not going to let us have that." I said, "Well, you have to ask them." I said, "If you don't ask them, we're never going to get it."
You were asking Congress?
She was Congress. She was the Congressional Research Service in Science Technology, so she would contact the Defense Department as the official representative of Congress. Saying, "Look, we want to know this. We're doing research on this. We want these documents."
Danny Sheehan wants the Blue Book.
So she just said that we who have been asked to do the research by President Carter, want to get access to the classified portions of Project Blue Book. And she called me back a couple of weeks later, and she was totally astonished that they'd agreed to do this. And she said, you have to go over to the new Madison building. That it was the new wing of the Library of Congress. They had just completed building.
What was the catch?
There wasn't one, as it turns out.
Really?
They said that I had the right to go over to do it. I had to bring two forms of identification. A photo official government identification. So I brought my passport, my DC driver's license, my bar association cards, for both the Southern District of New York and for Washington DC. So I brought those with me, and I went over to the Madison building on this Saturday morning, and went up to the main door, and here are these two suits. These guys just both standing there on the opposite sides of the door. Now these are not OSI guys. I mean, I know OSI guys, but they look like it wasn't the Office of Special Investigations of the Air Force. These were SF guys. I mean, these are Special Forces guys, and they were standing there guarding the door. They asked me for my ID. I showed them my ID, and so I went in to the hallway, and there wasn't anybody in the building. It was completely brand new, brand spanking new, not a soul in the building. And so I end up walking down the hallway, down to the elevator, get in the elevator, and I just happened to think I opened up my briefcase and took out a yellow legal pad, and just put it under my arm. And go down to the basement. The door opens. I look down the hallway on the left, and there's a light shining out of the room down there. Two other suits down there waiting, So I go all the way down there. They say, "You got to leave your briefcase here. You can't take any notes. You can't record anything. You can't take any photographs of anything." So I said, "Okay." So in I go. So
were you worried someone was going to whack you at any point?
No.
You're just fearless going down to this very secretive government hallway.
No, well, it was the Library of Congress. I mean, it was Madison building. So I go in, and here are these. There's like 4 cardboard fold-out tables, two on one side and two on the other side. The room is about maybe 20 feet wide, 15 feet deep. And there are these 4 card tables there. And there was this microfiche machine, this really old-timey kind of tinny microfiche machine.
Yeah, what's a microfiche?
Microfiche is these little canisters that they have, like little film canisters, and they like film strips in them that have got documents. They're photographs of documents and stuff. And so and there were these little shoebox, large shoebox size boxes with a little string tie on them, the little figure 8 string tie thing. And so I went in, sat down, take off my jacket and sit down, lay down the yellow pad over there on the table. And I started to go through the boxes. And I would open up the little tin canister, and I'd take out the film strip, and I'd go over to the microfiche machine, and you'd put it on this little roll-like thing, and you'd crank it. And so I started seeing all these documents. They were all top secret documents. They were all designated like this. And that I was saying, wait a second, this is going to take me forever. They're like there must have been 100 of these boxes. I said, that I'll never get through these things, so I'm looking for photographs. So I looked through the whole first 2, 3 canisters, and it's all just documents after documents after documents. So finally I get to the 3rd or 4th of these boxes, and I open up the canister and put it into the microfiche machine. I'm cranking along, and there are these photos. And I said, bango, here it is.
What did they show?
It was a crash retrieval. It was a UFO crash retrieval.
From when?
Operation. You couldn't tell. But you could tell it had crashed into a field that was covered with snow. So this isn't Roswell, because Roswell was in the desert in July in New Mexico. So it's got a snow-covered field. This UFO has skidded clearly across this field. It's dug up this big trench through the dirt. It's all piled up, in the snow, and it's stuck in the side of this embankment. It's kind of sticking out like a 45-degree angle, stuck in the side of this bank. It's got a dome on the top of it. It's like about 30 feet wide, with a big dome on the top of it, and is stuck in the side of this embankment, right? And there are these people around. They're Air Force people. You could tell that they were in Air Force winter garb, the big furry things around the hood and stuff. And they had cameras. They were taking photographs of this thing. And
did it look like they were wearing at that time like more modern clothing?
No. This the camera. They had a movie camera. One of the guys had a movie camera, and it had these 2 little canisters, little round canisters, like on the top of it, like it looked like the late 1940s or something like that. One of these little movie cameras. So that was how it looked. It looked like late 40s or early 50s or something, in that there were 2 of these guys that had the still photo cameras that were taking pictures of it. One other guy had a camera, but he wasn't doing anything. And then there was a 4th guy that had the movie camera with the little round canisters on the top of it. And so I could see it. And what I did is I noticed there were at least three photographs of this crash retrieval. And then I noticed in the second photograph, I could see along the bottom of the dome of the spacecraft, I could see these symbols that were along the bottom of the dome. And so I
a pyramid kind of thing?
Well, no, they were this.
Hieroglyphics?
No, they weren't hieroglyphics. They weren't Russian. They weren't Chinese. Something completely unique. And what I did is I looked at it and I said, "Wow!" I said, "Look at this, is extraordinary." So I took the microfiche focus and I took out the yellow pad and I opened up the yellow pad to the inside cardboard background, and I slid it in underneath the microfiche machine, and I focused it down so that it was exactly onto the back of the cardboard, and I traced them. I traced the symbols, absolutely identical. It was legal. I'm the lawyer. I made a ruling, unilateral ruling, that I was going to trace them. So I traced them exactly, and they looked like this. Actually,
yeah, let's see a drawing.
That here's the.
Wait, hold on one sec. Let me just get this ready, and then you go ahead. I'm going to take a video on my phone.
So here's the. I'll turn it around you, but so here's the field. And you can see in the field, you can see this big trench, has been dug, all the way down through the center of the field with the dirt all turned up around it like this. And here's the craft. The craft is like this, and it's like this whole classic flying saucer just stuck into the side of this embankment like this, right? And it's skidded all the way across this field, and all along here, right along here, about the bottom of the saucer, you could see these symbols, and they were like this. They were like.
Mm. So it didn't really look like anything you'd ever seen.
No, there was nothing. It was I'd never seen anything like this, And they were like this, with these little dots and dashes and little like U-shaped things with dots like that, and they were it was all along the bottom here where you could see it. So I traced them absolutely in the exact order, because I said this is going to be really important to have them be absolutely verbatim what there's there and in the exact order that they're in, because sometime we're going to be able to help figure out what this is saying, right? But I knew it was nothing. It wasn't Russian. It wasn't Chinese. It wasn't Hindu or Indian. It wasn't hieroglyphics or anything. And so I copied these down. And then I closed the yellow pad, right, like this, and I put it put the microfiche back into the little canister, put it back in the box, and tied it back up, put it in there, and got up, put on my jacket, and put the yellow pad back under my arm, like this, and just turned around and walked out.
No one stopped you.
Well, they were totally shocked. I mean, because I'd only been in there like an hour or something, a little over an hour, and I just walked right straight past the guys, and they were both they were both standing with their back to the door, kind of guarding it, right? Not that there was anybody around, but that was their job. And so I just walked right on past them, and I leaned down and I picked up my briefcase that was standing there. So I picked it up and just kept on walking down the hall. All of a sudden, one of the guys goes, "Hey, hold it. Sheehan, hold it. What is that you got there?" And I said, "Oh, this is my briefcase. I just picked up my briefcase. It was there." He said, No, what do you got? And they both come over to me, and they kind of loom in over me. And one of the guys reaches out and he yanks the yellow pad out from under my arm like that. He yanks it like this and opens up and flips through the yellow pages. There's nothing on them, of course, and then hands it back to me like that.
Oh, he didn't look at the cardboard.
No, and it was on the inside of the cardboard, and so he just hands it back to me, and so I just put it back under my arm and picked up my briefcase and just kind of went on down the hall and got down to the elevator and was just hoping I was going to make it out of there, and pushed the button. The elevator came. I went up, went out of the hall. The other two suits were gone.
Do you still have that?
I brought it back to Jesuit headquarters. We put it in the Jesuit files, and then we brought the Jesuit files to California with us later on, and we put them in a big storage place in Riverside. And there was a gigantic, big storm. Those whatever they call them, storms they have in California, that washed out part of the files. We didn't know what had been lost until later on, but we've looked for the yellow pad, and we haven't found it.
Oh my God!
So it was in the Jesuit files that we brought out there to California.